We are now live on AirMeet. So this is the first CLOA event we've hosted on AirMeet, events and festivals making use of public spaces. So please do bear with us if we have any teething problems. I'm going to hand over to Jayne Knight from our CLOA Executive Committee, who is acting as chair today. Over to you, Jayne.
Hello, welcome everybody. Welcome to this event that is a CLOA event. And I just wanted to remind everybody that CLOA is this professional association of leads in culture. We include archives, arts, museums, physical activity. We are strategic leads working across the public sector. And so these events where we get together and share our experiences of often developing challenging projects, doing new work, testing new ways of working. This is our opportunity to share with you and for all of us to develop our professional thinking. So I really invite everybody to be super switched on. Think about all the questions that you want to ask. We are amongst colleagues and we are talking to each other about how we do the best work that we can. Today, we are talking about public space, making the most of public space. And if I think about the thing that joins us together, working in the public sector, public space is an incredible asset. But how do we work it? And how do we balance that policing of it and the opening of it up? And the enabling of people to really love that public space. That's our job, that's the challenge, and that's what we're going to talk about today. One of the reasons I think that I am chairing this event today, I'm a member of CLOA and I'm on the executive, but I was also part of a small team that developed the idea of the First Light Festival in Suffolk. And I hope that everybody is in the room going, oh, yeah, I know about First Light. But if you don't, let me tell you that First Light is a 24-hour festival. It goes on all night and it goes on all night outdoors on the beach. So I think you can't get more challenging than that, more kind of public spacey and more exciting and exhilarating and challenging. And so I am delighted to introduce to you Genevieve Christie, who is the director of this wild festival. She's going to tell you how it began and how we make that asset, that biggest fantastic asset in Lowestoft, come to life for everybody. Genevieve.
Thanks very much, Jayne. Hi, yes, I'm Genevieve Christie. I'm director of First Light Festival. I've got a slideshow I'm going to try and share with you now to sort of tell the story about First Light Festival. So I'm just going to see if I can get that going. I hope you can all see that. And I'm just going to sort of give you, first of all, a little bit of background about Lowestoft in case you don't know that much about it. I hope you can see this slide of Lowestoft. You can see it's a large town. It's actually the second largest town in Suffolk, just under 74,000 people. You can see that, interestingly, it is, of course, on the coast. And like so many coastal towns, over the years, what was once a sort of thriving fishing town has actually suffered decline and the demise of its industries. A lot of the attendant industries that were there, like canning and ice making and rope making, all went away. And when I first started working in Lowestoft in around sort of 2015, 2016, I was working in a town that was very depressed. Educational outcomes very low, skills very low. I was doing culture education projects. But in around 2017, someone called Wayne Hemingway, who you might know of from Hemingway Designs, was invited to come to Lowestoft and to think about a seafront vision for the town. you can see a beautiful stretch of sandy beach along there. But at that point, the seafront was very tired. And actually, a lot of local people did not access that seafront. This fantastic asset was kind of like a wasted asset. And even the tourist industry had, fallen on kind of much harder times. So Wayne came in, and I was working there. I was introduced to him. And as part of the work they were doing, we started to think about what we could do to actually make a seafront vision animate the space of the town, bring people together. You can see that there is water that bisects Lowestoft, and actually psychologically that's had a huge effect on Lowestoft. It's not a town that has had brilliant community cohesion. It's a town that's been hard, to sort of connect people to each other. And so that was a challenge that we faced. But what we saw there was this incredible natural asset of public space. So we started to, think about what could we do. And we realised that actually Lowestoft was sitting on a very well-kept secret. And that is that it is the most easterly place in the country where the sun rises first. And once we had that knowledge, which was really hidden. There's a kind of strange thing called a Euroscope that's lodged behind the Bird's Eye factory and a gasometer in Lowestoft. And nobody really knew about it. Nobody talked about it. The narrative around Lowestoft was really of an end of the line place, somewhere that you wanted to get away from. But we wanted to change that narrative. And once we had this as the kernel, we were able to build on it. And we were able, with the help of the councils, it's not the best picture in the world, I'm afraid. There is Jayne Knight from Suffolk County Council, myself and Wayne, and someone called Kerry Blair from East Suffolk Council. And we were allowed space and time to start thinking about what we could do to make something really great. And we were able to have some blue sky thinking. And what happened was that once we had this knowledge about this wonderful characteristic of the place, we were able to then use the place itself as our inspiration. The land, the sea, and the sky really is what informs what First Light is. The name itself, First Light, came out of that. And we were very excited when we came up with that name because it's inherently optimistic and it's absolutely rooted in a sense of place. So there we are on the beach, thinking away, coming up with an idea that really shouldn't be allowed. A 24-hour festival, as Jayne said, a very innovative model, because at the heart of it is celebrating sunrise in this most easterly place. Again, something, you can only do in Lowestoft, and that creates a unique story. And you can see our early branding there for 2019 is inspired by a horizon. First Light is a free access festival on a public beach. So it's very challenging in lots of ways, but for it to be free was incredibly important. So we were starting to tell this story and getting that story out to everybody, including, of course, everybody in Lowestoft. The logistics, thinking about how we were going to do First Light, of course, were paramount in our minds. How were we going to do it? This is the lower promenade, and you can see it's a wonderful, broad expanse of promenade. You can see the glorious beach there, but you can also see there's very little else. And this slide as well, you can see there's just an expanse of beach. Above the beach, there are seafront gardens, but again, there are some benches, there's a pond, there's some tennis courts, there's a bowling green next door to that, and there's a kiosk in that picture. Hardly anything else. So you're looking at a space with nothing in it. So we had to think about how are we going to use this space. Now, this is an image of a map that we created, and you can see the levels on that map. On the left, you can see a green rectangle, and that is the Seafront Gardens, Kensington Gardens. It's elevated above the beach. Then you can see a little symbol of a knife and fork, and that's the promenade. Below that is the lower promenade, and then you can see the beach itself. You can see that there are different zones, and of course they're all inspired by our theme. So we've got the moon dance marquee, we've got the sunlight stage, we've got wellbeing by the waves, up in the gardens, we've got interstellar ideas on the green. All of these things were kind of inspired by our programming. They're all temporary structures. They all had to be brought onto the beach. And that leads me on to this next image, which is of a tractor, because creating that environment actually is quite hard. Everything has to be brought on by tractor and trailer. We take about a week to set the whole site up. We have the public coming and going. We have to be incredibly careful about how we manage it. But with the safety advisory group, with the goodwill of the council, we can do it. We get everybody involved. The public are so excited, and it's very important, I think, to get everybody involved and to see what's happening. They feel as if they are part of the festival being created in front of their eyes. You can see another bit of installation there. This is actually a sculpture that we commissioned that you'll see in some further slides. Again, everything, health and safety, very important. Safety advisory group, of course, advising us all the way along. We work with 3 councils for this, the town council, district council and county council, and everybody supports us. And that's what makes the whole thing happen. This is a really grainy picture, but I just wanted to show you again the expanse of the beach and this concept of creating something from nothing. Those are members of the Men's Shed, a wonderful organisation who get involved with us, creating our feast table on the beach. But what strikes me with that photograph is how flimsy it looks. And you have to have a vision when you do something like this, and you have to believe that you can create an environment out of nothing. And it's a challenge, but it's also incredibly exciting. We can't do First Light without a lot of partners, and this slide shows some of the partners that we work with. We work with science partners as well as arts organisations. First Light is a multi-arts festival, but with a strong science slant, because everything, again, is inspired by our environment. And of course, being by the sea, marine science is very important. And that's really what you're looking at there. Partners, CFAS and Natural History Museum being 2 extremely important partners in what we do. This is a local wood turner, Darren Breeze, and I included a slide of him because I just wanted to show how important it is to have local artisans, crafters, fledgling artists and professional artists across the piece involved in what we do. Again, it's all about local buy-in of people from this place. And that's Dave, who runs the Model Boat Club. Little things like that, also incredibly important, getting buy-in from people at the micro level, as well as, people from big arts organisations that are also involved in the festival. First Light is really about reveling in a sense of place and having an experiential experience. And we realised very early on that camping would be key to this. And again, a very brave council decision to allow us to have wild camping on the beach. Historically, the council would be moving people along who were camping on the beach and shouldn't be. But for First Light Festival, we manage it carefully. We call it wild camping because it has no infrastructure around it, but it is a key part of the experience to be able to sleep under the stars, sleep by the waves, wander down into the festival site. And if you look at that far left-hand image on the bottom, you can see how close the camping is. You're then walking down into the festival site, and it is a magical part of the whole experience. We want First Light to be as sustainable as possible. And what's so brilliant about our beach site is how near it is to the town. It's got very close proximity to the railway station, and there's very few festivals in the country that you can actually get on a train, get into the middle of a town and walk down into a festival site. So many of them are sort of barricaded in their own villages, really. Of course, we also encourage cycling and walking. We want First Light to be incredibly sustainable. We are a leave no trace festival, and the environment means a lot to us. Partnering with Greater Anglia is very important, and that's a poster that's just gone up for our festival, which is happening in a few weeks' time. So here's a picture I just wanted to show you, which shows the promenade from a different direction. That was the opening of the festival in 2019. It's looking towards Claremont Pier and the town. And again, it shows you the relationship of the beach and the town, really, which is very close. Another angle shows you the expanse of the beach and how terrifying, really, a large canvas can be, but how when you create zones of activity, it all starts to make sense. On the shoreline to the right, you can see a tent, a clear tent and a group of people. That's our beach club. And then the teepees house different areas of activity, children, well-being, and creating those zones helps people sort of navigate the space. This is just some illustrations really of different parts of activity of the festival. There's Pakefield Man in the bottom again. These show you the different demographics that the festival attracts, which actually crosses from the youngest child to the most elderly person that would attend. Dance, music, we commission work. We also have a lot of community activity. This slide shows the beach club, which is non-stop DJs. That feast table, those flags in the middle, they are actually sprouting up from the feast table that the men's shed put together. And then you can just see some different activity on those other slides to the right, different age groups. We have some fantastic musicians. And of course, the whole festival is going through the 24 hours and it's responding to the time of day. So the music, the activity is responding to what's happening across the 24 hours. Here are the gardens. I spoke about the pond earlier. Well, now you can see it come to life during the festival. And the gardens are a wonderful part of the festival as well. It gives another dimension and enables us to programme in different ways. Here's some of the science programming. That was Kevin Fong, a fantastic scientist, talking about journeys to the moon in 2019. We had some sort of astronomical activities. And we also have on that level Makers Market, where we can showcase the fantastic sort of creativity of local people. Food and drink, my goodness, that went incredibly well. That's on the promenade. Again, everything brought in, logistically quite hard, but worked incredibly well. A very good local and regional food and drink offer. And then day turns to night. The tenor of the festival changes somewhat. A lot of security that we have running all the time comes into play. Community policing, very important, but it is policed as a community event. And we like to mark different points of the festival. That flashing fire on the left is actually our Pakefield Man structure, who's been set alight with a flaming arrow. We'll be marking midnight with that tonight with the support of the fire service. All of these things can be done with good planning and support. Here we are. We've travelled through the 24 hours nearly. We're at dawn. That's at the heart of our festival, and it's an amazing collective experience. And again, we'll be serving smoked fish, free bread for people who can make it to that point to celebrate sunrise together. We had a lot of people in 2019. We thought we'd have 10,000 people. We had in the region of 35,000. The council invested 90,000 and they saw a huge return on that investment. And this year they are investing more than double that. The return was great. You can see from that slide, the wider sort of economic impact was felt across the town very successfully. And also the community outcomes were incredibly strong. You can see some of those statistics, volunteering being a huge part of what we do. And here were some of the responses from people. It was great. It was about bringing the people into the town. Here we've got Lowestoft people trying new things and new people trying Lowestoft. Brilliant. I think having a festival in the town is incredibly important. This is my last slide. It's just a sort of There we are. That was the festival. We're about to do it again shortly. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and hope that I can come back to you. There we are. Bit of a whistle-stop tour.
Oh, thank you, Genevieve. That was particularly lovely for me, because as you were showing those slides, I was thinking, yes, I was there, and I felt all of that sort of magnificent sense of a community coming together and filling itself with joy. And becoming such a positive community. And I think that, as you said at the beginning, Lowestoft is very used to being talked about as a place that faces a lot of challenges. And it is such a lovely thing to be talking about Lowestoft and its achievements. We're going to have questions at the end after our three speakers. So I am delighted to introduce everybody to Symon Easton, my good colleague from Birmingham City Council. And Symon, you're going to talk about Digbeth. And I have to say, as well as taking part in First Light Festival, I have absolutely had the joy of taking part in events in Digbeth. And Digbeth is an extraordinary place. And I have watched Digbeth over 20 years transform itself. And I'm really looking forward to your presentation. Just a reminder to colleagues, do think about the questions that you want to ask. We are colleagues, and this is about all of us learning from each other. And so I'm going to hand over to you, Symon, and I hope you can share your screen.
Yeah, so do I. Thank you, Jayne. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah, good, thanks. Right, I'm going to press my share screen button, and hopefully...
How are we doing? We're not there yet. I can't see it. I can see, I have a nice picture of Heidi.
Am I there yet?
Not yet.
Do you want me to try, Jayne?
I think that would be a good idea, Heidi.
Thank you, Heidi, because it's saying share and then cancel, so I don't get that. But you can
how's that looking?
Yep.
Hey, brilliant.
Okay, do the good old next slide then when you're ready.
Yeah,
We will.
thank you,
Heidi.
Thanks, Heidi. Next slide, please. Good, thank you. So just a bit of background, historical background for Digbeth, really. In the, well, late 1600s, early 1700s, it became a centre of industry, and with tanneries and blacksmiths in particular, partly because at the time, the water supply from both the River Rere and the natural springs enabled those businesses to thrive. But as the Industrial Revolution progressed and Birmingham became the city of 1,000 trades, Digbeth was very, very much at the heart of that. Lots of small industries, manufacturing away, particularly from the sort of peak time of 1790 right through to the 1900s. Became a real centre of manufacturing and home to the likes of Typhoo Tea, massive big warehouse there, Fife's Banana Warehouse, and indeed the Custard Factory, which I'll talk about more in a minute. They were just three examples of major businesses that had developed from this sort of centre of manufacturing. And also the advent of the Birmingham Grand Union Canal, of course, enabled those businesses to transport their goods, to bring in fuel and materials for their area. So over time, of course, like many industrial areas, it fell into decline. And indeed, the Typhoo Tea warehouse is still there, but empty. The banana warehouse is still there, but empty. Custard Factory has been redeveloped as an arts facility, which is fantastic. But over time, smaller businesses, literally died out. And other businesses such as sort of car shops, car manufacturing and cleaning shops, for example, sort of took over. a lot of the spaces has been bought by private developers, particularly the likes of Oval Estates and Homes England, waiting for the opportunity for development and development opportunities, be it housing or commercial development. And some of that is very much taking place now. But the sort of manufacturing industries were replaced over time by, because of the low rents, obviously, small to medium enterprises and cultural organizations of some 500 plus in number today. So a bit of interesting social history, just to add to that sort of manufacturing history, is that in the mid 19th century, there was a huge influx of Italian immigration from poverty in Italy at the time. That subsequently, that Italian community was broken up in and after World War II, because most of the Italians were interned in war camps following particularly the Luftwaffe bombing of Birmingham. So that was an unfortunate demise of the Italian population, but that was subsequently overtaken by the Irish immigration, and Birmingham is still known as the Irish Quarter, and annually presents the St. Patrick's Day parade. It's some 100,000 people, so a really big event. And the other bit of interesting social history is that the Digbeth streets were a hotbed for the Peaky Blinders. You'll all be familiar with the Peaky Blinders, Stephen Knight program. They were actually a very nasty bunch, and I don't know if ever you've seen the Carl Chin documentary, local historian Professor Carl Chin. But the Peaky Blinders were not the romantic lot that you see romanticized on the TV. So a couple of example pictures there. You can just see the sort of industrial area of what you may also be familiar with in typical city centre locations. Next slide, please. So the Digbeth area has a strong reputation for music, and there's an example there of the O2 Institute, which used to be a civic hall in earlier life, but also very prominent in the electronic music, growth of electronic music in Birmingham, and so has quite a reputation for the music scene, with also local pubs, the Rainbow Pub being another example of a music venue. Next slide, please. So the Creative Quarter has grown over the years. And I mentioned earlier the custard factory that was taken up by private developers some years ago now, and made available for small-scale artists and arts organisations to hire to develop their cultural practices. It also includes gallery spaces and meeting spaces and so forth. But the custard factory was probably the custard factory, I beg your pardon. This is the Bird's custard factory, by the way, the non-egg powder that you'll all be familiar with, that was developed by Frederick Bird in Birmingham. And interestingly, if you come in on the train from London, quite cleverly, there's another little artistic centre next door to the custard factory called Rhubarb, which I think was quite an amusing way of developing their offer. But a number of units are taken up by artists and arts organisations within the custard factory, which helps to the whole sort of cultural ecology. But Digbeth is also home to the Birmingham coach station and a hostel, youth hostel. So there's another element to the Digbeth context. Next slide, please, Heidi. So the map on the left-hand side gives you a sort of a visual indication of where the Digbeth Quarter is, just south of the city centre, right adjacent to Moore Street Station, and to the top right, HS2, which will be coming in 2026 or 2030, which will be a major element. Let's come off my screen. Oh, that's back again. So Digbeth First Friday, as you can read, was launched back in May 2014 on the first Friday of every month, and as you can see, comes alive with a whole range of different events and activities, not just in terms of the food and bar offer existing, but to the galleries opening and venues opening and pop-up entertainment. Next slide, please, Heidi. So they're all a little different, as you can see and you can read. Most of the galleries get involved. In fact, the 4 galleries that are based around Digbeth area came together and developed the website and the activity program for the First Friday. Next slide, please. So you can see a diverse range of cultural events: spoken word, open night studios, roving one night only projects, exhibitions in a gallery, live music gig, evening of performance, and anything else in between. So it really does depend on the local ecology as to whether they want to participate, and most indeed do. Obviously, a lot of it is fairly weather permitting in terms of the ability to walk the streets and follow a route, if you like. And there is always usually some sort of route map associated with the events happening the week before, which you can access via the website. Next slide, Heidi. I seem to have lost mine. Okay. So Digbeth First Friday benefits, as you can see, visitors can pick up a disloyalty card as they go around, and then those can be swapped for treats across the evening with individual and different bar locations and exhibition event spaces or whatever is going on. And there is, as I say, listings that's published a few days in advance so that you can find out what's going on, different activities, in different weeks. Next slide, please. I've mentioned that the galleries sort of administer the listings and the website. It runs from 6 till late every evening, and a map, as I said, was available a few days before. Next slide, Heidi. Now, in addition to that, the Digbeth Dining Club, which you may have heard of, which is every Friday evening, again subject to weather in terms of the event's scope anyway, was founded in 2012, and again another sort of really commercial event organised by a number of venue and catering providers across the region, and this has become enormously successful, won multiple awards since its growth, and as its reputation has increased, the number of sites and the number of locations has also increased, and pop-up food as well. Next slide, please, Heidi. So this is my last slide on this one, really, but it very much coincides with the Digbeth First Friday idea, the Digbeth Dining Club, which has happened to expand now across it's been so successful. It's in other venues and locations across the West Midlands as an initiative, but very much a success. And I think the thing for me is that this is not a city council organised or supported event in any way. However, in terms of our visitor destination and attractions, it's become a really important part of the visitor attraction for Birmingham, and particularly that district. And so we obviously really support it and its future growth and development. There is a slight challenge with Digbeth now becoming gentrified, really, and a number of the smaller spaces and smaller artists that we've got are having to move out. They've either been given notice or the rents are becoming too expensive. So that is a challenge, I think, for the city council to address when, like in many other places where you've got cultural quarters, that we're going to have to help try and resolve and support and maintain that cultural ecology that has grown up in and around the Digbeth area. That's me, and happy to take any questions or comments afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Symon. Again, that was such the arc of that 20 years of development in the area. And I was wondering, as you were talking, how many of us in the room know what you're talking about when you're talking about Bird's custard powder, and that idea that the very root of this place will change, and that Digbeth is on its own journey now. It's also very interesting that that Digbeth has grown up itself, has not been council led, but has been enabled, hasn't it? And I think there's a question in my mind about how we enable the creative community to occupy a space. and do what the creative community can do to drive change. Thank you so much. We're going to move on to Jon Hunt from Coventry City Council. Welcome, Jon. I haven't taken part in Sports Fest in Broadgate Square, so I'm really looking forward to hearing about this, and also the idea of this week-long event about participation in the middle of the city. And so welcome, Jon, and please go ahead. Have you worked out with Heidi how we're going to share screen?
I'll have a go and see if I can share it. So let me have a go, and if not, Heidi, then jump in and see if that's possible.
This is our first time using AirMeet, and we're doing a bit of learning, so please bear with us.
No, I might need Heidi to jump on.
I think
Sorry,
we're going to need you, Heidi, to share. Have we got Heidi? We may have lost her. Here she comes. Lovely. Thank you, Heidi. Or is Jon, are you doing that?
I don't think I am. I'm hoping it's Heidi.
Heidi,
as if by magic.
I can see that it's Heidi. It's certainly not me. Lovely. Please give your presentation, Jon.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jay. And you're always welcome to come and have a go this August into July if you're about. Nice to meet everyone. I'm Jon Hunt. I'm Service Manager for Sport, Physical Activity and Wellbeing at Coventry City Council. And we've ran an initiative called Sports Fest for 10 years, and this will be our 10th year of running the event this summer. And we started the event as part of the Olympics back in 2012. And I'll talk through some of the space, but the image you can see on screen now is Broadgate. It's a large city centre space. During this period here, there was a cultural event, which is the ribbons that are hanging from across all the buildings, and then the sports infrastructure below. And it was a really nice tie-in between Coventry being UK City of Culture and offering a sporting activity as well. So we tried to find a really way to do that. Heidi, if you could share the next slide for me, please. So as I mentioned, Broadgate is a city centre location surrounded by shops, right in the heart of the city. And previously it was a route for our buses. So it was a road, and it was it's where Our Lady Godiva statue is, if anyone's ever been to Coventry. And it was a space that was really underutilised. It was not very well presented. And the discussions in the build-up to the Olympics was we wanted to create a bit better city centre offer, and it was part of our city centre master plan. So we transformed Broadgate. It was one of the big pieces of work we did as part of 2012. And we created a space that was not only a space that could be social for local people, it created a whole new bar industry, restaurants, and it transformed what that city centre offer is. But within that, we created a large space that would improve the visitor experience and would hold circa 10,000 people. So it's a space that can hold large numbers. We hold a lot of events in there. One of our events that we hold in there is our Christmas light switch on, which we get up to kind of 10,000 people in. But it's a wonderful space that's become a real hub of the city centre and our offerings. Within that, there's a number of buildings, and we had a number of older shops and derelict units, and my screen's just changed, that were struggling. They didn't have a lot of infrastructure, but now there's a whole change in terms of restaurants and the offering there. I don't know if that screen's just gone. Yeah, bro. So, but in terms of everyone talks about legacy from the Olympic Games, but this space is really a true legacy of 2012, and we've continued to activate that and use it as a really sound space for sport, culture, and a range of other activities as well. If you could go to the next one for me, Heidi, please. So this gives you a clear image. This image is actually from around 2013-14, so it's transformed even more since this one, but I just thought it gave you a scale and a kind of view in what we're talking around in terms of the spaces. and it's a really good opportunity to see the space, and we really utilise the space well. And it was built when we built it. It kind of had a lot of infrastructure and electricity powers in the right locations, and we made sure that we planned that in a really succinct way. In terms, if you can go to the next one for me, Heidi, please. So, Sports Fest in its purest form is a city centre summer holiday event. Can last between 6 days and 2 weeks. As I said, it's our 10th year, and at different points when we were European City of Sport in 2019, we did a 2-week event, and we absolutely covered the city centre with sport, physical activity, and made sure that it was something that we could kind of be really proud of as part of that offering. We, as a council and local authority, we don't necessarily do all the management of this event. We kind of contract that out to local partners, and we work with some of our kind of local kind of social enterprise that was built out of 2012, and ran the volunteer program for us and became a volunteer and event management company. And I think they are still the only volunteering program that still lasts 10 years on from the game. So we're really proud of that, and we work with our other leisure providers to support this program as well. The unique thing is it doesn't actually cost us a lot of money, because the people that come in and fill the space is local organisations, local sports clubs, and it's a real good offer for them to just offer something for people to try and have a go at. And if they've never even saw the picture, there's parkour, they've probably never even had access to parkour in their locality. So we just like to give people the opportunity to try different things, different sports, and something different every day. We run about 3 or 4 sports activity, physical activity zones, and there's different activity for everyone. So there's stuff for families, there's stuff for young people, there's stuff for adults, and there's a whole range of things that they can have a go at. What we've seen, and one of the big successes, is we've seen the transfer from people just coming into this space and having a go, and signing up to their local sports club or signing up to their local project in one of our priority communities that we want to see people connecting with. So we, for example, our gymnastics club, when they did it in 2019, signed up 367 new members, and people that expressed an interest and were interested in taking part in gymnastics. That then obviously gave them a logistical problem, because they needed to find space to deliver more activity and to understand what that would be and how that would work. In addition, the whole event is all around families, as I've said, but also we ensure that there's music and there's live DJs. And if we look at the kind of inequalities within Coventry and a lot of the barriers that local people face, some of the feedback we've had over the 10 years, and obviously with the cost of living crisis that we're currently in, this becomes a holiday experience for many of our families. And it's an opportunity to come in and experience something. And similar to the Lowestoft examples earlier, we try and make as much of the activity free as possible. There's some bits around the edge that helps to make it commercially viable, but we make it free, and it is about that holiday experience. Yes, we have had the problem where some parents have dropped their kids into this thinking it's a crash, and then they go and shop in Primark. But we obviously are really keen to make sure that we're engaging with those families that are a part of it. I've mentioned our volunteers. We have a whole host of volunteers that make this happen every year, and on a daily basis, they're there as part of it. And from a cost perspective for us as a local authority, this is a really cheap event to host and put on, because of the amount of in-kind and partnership that we get. Some of our main costs are that we sub some of the work out to coordinate and manage it for us, and some of the infrastructure, but the infrastructure is fairly light touch as well. We've developed the model over the 10 years, and we've brought more and more commercial income in. So we bring in fairs, we've got advertising opportunities around the whole of the arenas. We've got sponsorship from commercial organisations such as Vodafone that back it, and we provide activation opportunities for all of them to make this viable. We have all of our public health partners that come in and be part of this as well, where we create a whole stall environment around. So it's more than sport, it's also talking to people about all of the different elements that are our focus, and I'm sure colleagues focus across the area. The area we've been building from probably 2017-18 is our connection between culture and sport, and how do we blur the lines between culture and sport and some of the audience development work that we're doing. And we're starting to drop in experiences, performances. This year at our event, we've got a Commonwealth Games cultural programme that's been funded by the Arts Council called Come Bowl With Me. And there's a whole programme that's around bowling and its performance, and it's fantastic. We've done something similar with Talking Birds, who's delivering that for us here around cricket. So we're really looking forward to that in terms of continuing that narrative. Next slide, please, Heidi. Brilliant, thank you. And this is just images, and I'm going to talk to this. So in terms of impact, and I think that's an important point for us to look at, number one, it's free, it's affordable, and families and communities will come together to be able to achieve that. It brings together the sense of community, the sense of festival, and the sense of cohesion. We often try and encourage our sports organisations to work together, and we use this as a bit of a catalyst to bring different organisations and different partners together to ensure that they can kind of work on different opportunities outside of this one event setting. So that's important. I've mentioned around increasing membership. The big thing is we've got a number of projects in priority places across Coventry linked to some of our Sport England funded work. And we're always quite conscious to make sure that they're a part of these events, to make sure that they're connecting with people that they might not be connecting with on their doorsteps, but also in that city centre as an offering. But we also bring children, families, and we've got lots of partners that now bring them into this event, and they come and spend a day, a morning as part of it and take part in it. We've also once we finish, we kind of run the event between 10 and 4, which is our peak periods, and we see large footfall. But we've also ran business events. So we've engaged through the Business Improvement District with local businesses and ran sports competitions in the evening, i.e. we've ran netball competitions, it's a knockout type events, and we've found a real sense of community with our businesses, which the bid have been particularly impressed with. If you go to the next slide, please, Heidi. Thank you. So again, this is in terms of the current environment and the current theme. If you think of Sport England strategy and where we're all going, this is a real opportunity for our sports clubs to perform. This is a chance for them to connect, because more often than not, I think we've got a slightly different focus in terms of some of the community and some of the community offering. This is a way that we still engage and build the relationship and our rapport with our sports clubs, and they really value being part of this, and they always clamber to be supporting it. We never struggle to fill the content of the days, and it's a really great one for them as clubs for their profile. We've seen huge increase in social media linked to this, and we're now seeing families that are following our activity because of this event, but also because of other events we're doing, such as our Go Parks schemes that's in local parks, and another project that we'll talk about a little bit later. But our social media channels have become really important for us in terms of connecting and advertising what we're doing, because families are now looking for our channel to see what we're going to do in the next half term or summer or as part of the school year. We also get support from our professional clubs, so from our football, rugby, ice hockey, that all come in and take part and are connected into it. And we've also managed to always have a theme. So there's always a different theme, and Coventry's been really lucky for the last 10 years to host the Olympic Games. We've been European City of Sport, we're UK City of Culture, and then we're obviously hosting the Commonwealth Games later this year as a host city with Birmingham. We're hosting the International Children's Games in August this year, and we're also hosting the Rugby League World Cup. So we'll theme a lot of that so that we're still promoting all the events. And this year has got a particular focus coming out the back of City of Culture at the end of the month is around our Summer of Sport that will follow. And we've also seen our bid colleagues report to us the increase of about 20% increase in terms of footfall figures. They're hugely impressed with kind of 286,000 people through in terms of footfall, and on average we get participating between 10 and 15,000 people. So physically being active, because we monitor that to see who's been into the zones, who's tried sport, who's not tried sport. But we also get lots of families that are standing around enjoying the atmosphere, enjoying the environment, and are engaging in all what's on offer. So it's been a real success for us, and we're really proud that we continue to deliver this event. Next slide, please, Heidi. So this is a video, and this might really challenge our IT, but I'm willing to give it a try if Heidi is. If there's any sound, I'm not sure if the sound is going to work. No, it might give you a good image. But this is just some images, and obviously you can see some of the weather can be an issue for us in the open space. That's Chelsea Giles, who was our first gold medalist last year at the Olympic Games. And then we have got some text. And last year's event was really important to us coming out the back of COVID, and the importance of bringing people back together. Heidi, you can go to the next slide for me, please. And it was a real challenge. We had to put a lot of measures into place to make sure that it was safe. But the fundamental reason of bringing communities together was absolutely central. So this year we're going to deliver the event again for the period of 26th to 31st of July. It links to our whole Commonwealth Games programme that we've got, and we've got a whole load of Commonwealth interaction, and we'll be celebrating this at 10th one and be sharing the number of people that have took part over that 10 years. So we're really pleased with it. Next slide, please, Heidi. And then kind of in terms of public space and how we've utilised this space further, I just thought I'd give you a couple of other examples, because that's a great sporting example. But one of the projects that we've pulled together as a partnership is our October half term and the challenges around, especially over the last few years with people not travelling away during half term. And again, getting that holiday experience for local families and putting on affordable activity that local people can really cherish. And we came together with our events colleagues in the council, city centre, BID, police, universities, and all the partners to develop an offer for half term that was quite unique. And actually our footfall and number of people in the city centre last October was absolutely phenomenal. So we created a monsters trail that's become really popular, which is an inflatable monsters on buildings, on the side of buildings, in local spaces. And we had a huge number of young people that were coming in as families to do that. Within that, there was also an offering around pumpkins, which the BID delivered. And then we decided to put in a roller rink and a roller skating arena, which is an absolutely fantastic way to bring families and communities together and break down all the barriers that might want to be. Heidi, next slide, please. And the most important thing for us was that we would create the arena. It was all built into the system. It's a Coventry company that delivers these roller arenas all over the UK and internationally. And for us, we made it affordable. So we made it £3 a person, and we made it cheaper with our leisure card. So we've got a card called the Go CV card, and we've got 75,000 residents on that card, and we can manipulate the price for local events. We've also got the ability to enable those on benefits to pay even less. So it's a really important card for us, but also whenever we're doing events, we tie the two together. Next slide, please, Heidi. And in terms of the event, we saw huge families coming in to take part. Our feedback that we never thought we'd get was it's affordable. and it's something that they can achieve. And they were coming in spending a day, so they would come and do the Three Monsters Trail. They would probably spend £6 or whatever it was as a family to skate and spend a couple of hours in here, and then they'd also be part of the pumpkin route. So we were getting them in with a whole offer that wasn't costing a £50 ticket to a major attraction. So people really fed back on that was good. And some of the feedback we've had over time, we've also, I talked earlier about music and how important music was in terms of bringing the spaces alive and connecting with people. We also recognise that a lot of people don't like that music and find it more difficult to connect in those environments. So we made sure that we delivered quiet time sessions. So we dedicated certain hours in the day where that music would be lower, and we were staggered by the numbers that came in for those special sessions, purely for some young people that then we were able to engage. So really pleased with this as an offering. We're looking at doing the roller rink again next year because it was so popular, and we also put a ice rink in the winter period, but this was hugely successful because we could put the price point at the right place for local people, and that was something that we want to continue with, really. And I think I've got one final slide. I think our next challenge in the final bit that I said I'd mention to Heidi is we do this work in this public space, and our focus and some of the work that we now do is focused on other local spaces in local communities, that we're really keen to take these activations and events into smaller spaces, and our focus is around on the doorstep and in people's streets. So that's, as well as city centre, we want to try and do a bit of both. So it's a fantastic space, and we're really proud of what we've delivered across that period.
Thank you so much, Jon. That was a really interesting presentation, and I think you've given us a really neat segue into our panel debate about this issue of whether we are anxious or not about having fixed venues. And I think, as you were saying there, Jon, this idea that you are now moving into other public places around the city. And the reason for that is because they're not gated. And that if we think about all of our policies and all of our commitments, they are about engagement. They are about welcoming people. They are about enabling people to take a chance, to take a risk, to pitch up to something, not spend any significant sum of money, and see if they start to have a good time. And so public spaces, given we are all officers working within culture and wanting people to see people engage with culture, with creativity, with physical activity, with their locality. What we're asking people to do is just take a very slight chance to get involved. And if I think about your kind of large municipal art gallery, even your big kind of, converted town hall, your big theatre, you've got a ticket price, you've got a gate that you've got to go through, you've got ways of behaving that people might not understand. So these public spaces become really exciting places to welcome people. We have a couple of questions in the chat. What I want to ask everybody, because we're on AirMeet has both a chat box and a Q&A box. If you want to put your questions in the Q&A, that would be lovely. We are a small group, so if you feel you're not being heard, do sort of say out loud, Jayne, I really want to come in, because that will be fine. Inevitably, there is a question Debbie, about the weather. Jon, you touched on this, but Genevieve, do you want to talk a little bit about the weather?
Yes, the weather. I'm nervous about the weather now, thinking about June. I think, yeah, you obviously have to have a sort of wet weather plan, and you have to have, you know, contingency, thinking about that and kind of mitigation. But I think in our environment, so we are in a big open air space, which now post COVID is, you know, kind of a huge asset for us, that we've got, you know, we're in the open air, but we do have a lot of venues, I suppose. You know, we've got large marquees that people can go in. And I think for us, it's actually the wind. It's the wind more than the rain. So for us, it's the stability of the structures. We actually weight everything down on the beach with sandbags. So in a few weeks' time, we'll be filling 151-ton bags with sand from the beach to weight down all of our structures, including sort of large-scale sculptures as well. And I think that's more of an issue for us, actually, than the rain. Obviously, the rain is going to make it a different event. But I'm hopeful that if we do have extreme rain, you know, in a few weeks' time, okay, there will be some element of rain. People will wrap up. They will, you know, get on with it. If it's very, very windy, that's where where your extreme weather cover comes in, and that's a call that, you know, would have to be made, really anticipating what the forecast is. I think open air events, that's, you know, when I'm looking at the insurance, I'm looking at our extreme weather cover very carefully. So that's, you know, that's how I approach it, really. But I think sort of bad weather, as long as it's not extreme weather, is something that we will encounter and get on with.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Genevieve. I think the other thing, as a participant at First Light, it gets really cold at night, and you need to wrap up warm. But the beauty of that, because it's not a gated event, because actually the beach is part of the town centre, what happens is that the pubs and restaurants get filled with people, and that's part of. So the audience can find its way into a town and into a place where there is warmth, shelter, food, and all those other things. Whilst we want people participating in the festival, there's plenty of room for people to find their own space, and that. I think, again, this sense of using public ungated space means that you've got a crowd that manages itself, and that there's something very subtle about that. Jon, do you want to comment about the weather?
Yeah, obviously we've got a big open space in terms of Broadgate, and our biggest issue is we don't put lots of flooring in, and we don't kind of create infrastructure to make it kind of a daunting experience. We have some of that, but our biggest issue is kind of once it rains, it becomes quite a slippy environment. So we have to kind of manage that and pause activity and be sensible around what we do. We, again, similar to Genevieve, we've got similar issues around wind, and it's a bit of a wind tunnel at times. So ensuring that our gazebos, etc., that are all in there and that infrastructure is well managed and supported. We have quite a lot of inflatables that come in as well. So a lot of partners use inflatables for speed shots and pitches and stuff that go inside the arenas. So we're mindful of that. We manage it on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis. We're currently just planning we're putting a 3-on-3 basketball competition into Broadgate in the summer as part of the International Children's Games, and we're just starting to look at our wet weather procedures for that, because it's competition with international cities, similar to what Birmingham are doing and a part of, I'm sure. But it's a key factor, but we manage it from an ops point of view and continue to update people on social media if there are delays or stoppages, and that's important to us.
Yeah, That's really helpful, and I think the principle of this is that we're working with people, and people know that we're working outside. So we all, your audience takes responsibility, you take responsibility. There's a kind of partnership with the public going on. Symon, do you want to comment on the weather?
Well, I've got a reasonably nice day here today. I don't know about anybody else. No, I think it's common sense. I think what I would say is that we're quite robust, aren't we, in this country? We've got used to it over the years, and we're quite forgiving, really, of certainly the intention when people are trying to stage an event, whether it be your local village carnival or fete, or I mean, we've got the Queen's Jubilee coming up in a week's time, haven't we? And loads of street parties and things, and including outside where I live, and it'll go ahead whatever happens, and I think we all are reasonably tolerant and forgiving. But there are sensible, as Genevieve was talking about, contingency measures that should be looked at in the event of bad weather, not just rain but wind. I mean, years ago I used to run a balloon festival, and I remember almost all of the Saturday was taken out because the wind was too high for balloons to take off, and it was just one of those things. You just have to accept it and try and manage as best you can. And I think we're all familiar with that, as I say, with this country. That you can get pluvial insurance or extreme weather insurance. It's a bit of a risk in terms of not only the cost but the conditions that are put on it, as to the amount of rain or the amount of extreme weather that you actually experience on the day. We all know what insurance companies are like. But in that mix of indoor outdoor opportunity that's again been mentioned is very worthwhile considering.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm also looking in the Q&A session. There's a question about volunteers. And I think although no one has explicitly mentioned it, these events usually depend on a huge number of fabulous volunteers. And those volunteers, I think it's part of the legacy of 2012 actually as well, are part of the community development that goes on in a place. And I wonder, Genevieve, do you want to say something about your volunteers and how it's looking now in that post-COVID space?
Yes, I mean, you're absolutely right. Volunteers are, at the heart of certainly First Light Festival, and I know so much activity, cultural activity or sports activity that goes on. We were quite anxious when we started our volunteer recruitment for this year, and I've got our volunteer coordinator in the room next door to me, actually, with our team. And I think we were intrigued to see the demographic to do with volunteers, because often, I don't know about Jon and Symon, but the most reliable volunteers are sometimes the more mature volunteers. They might kind of have a really very responsible approach to the whole kind of experience. And of course, quite a lot of more mature people in society have been affected by COVID. But actually, we have found that steadily, we are better than we were in 2019. There is a thirst, I think, for being involved. We do a lot of active recruitment. We're going into the colleges, we're going into community groups, we're talking about what we do. We're very lucky at the moment that we're in a pop-up space in the middle of the ward where our festival takes place, and we've got lots of posters in our windows on a local high street, and people are just coming in, and that's brilliant. So I think it's we're up to about 120 people at the moment who are volunteering. We need a few more, and we've got some shifts that we need to fill, but actually we're really delighted with where we are. So I think it's looking good, but I know that it's probably different in different environments. But touch wood, at the moment, people, they want to be involved, and we're delighted.
That's great, thank you, Genevieve. I think whilst there's been a drop-off for regular volunteering, we know that from our museums. I think event volunteering is a slightly different group of people. as well. And what about you, Jon? How are your volunteers?
We're quite fortunate, I think, as a place in terms of volunteering. I kind of referenced it earlier in terms of our capacity that we developed in 2012. We managed to maintain that all the way through. And then our social enterprise that's doing our volunteer development across the city have then been managing our City Host programme for UK City of Culture. So we've seen a huge increase in volunteers for City of Culture as well. For our events in the summer, our Sports Fest, we're full with the volunteers already. Our International Children's Games, we put a call out to our volunteer cohort, and we've got in excess of 250 volunteers before we've even had to go out for an open call. So we're really lucky across volunteering. I think what we're seeing from a sports and leisure perspective, I think we're seeing volunteers that are struggling probably within the sports environment and the clubs. So we're currently negotiating the programme with clubs, and some of those volunteers have massively changed, and the community volunteers have hugely changed. So I think that will become more of an issue as we evolve over the coming months. But for event volunteering, we're really fortunate, I think, in terms of what Coventry's got.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you, Jon. Can I ask people, if you would like to raise your hand, please do so. And then using AirMeet, what will happen is that Heidi will invite you to the stage. And as you know, we are testing this system today. So if people do want to raise their hands, please go ahead, and we will pick it up from there. I can see more questions in the Q&A. I've got 3 questions in there at the moment. One about crowd safety, one a specific one, Genevieve, about the camping, and another one about public sector investment. And I thought it's worth us reflecting on this issue of what it costs and what it doesn't cost. And I think as somebody involved with the First Light Festival, I know that East Suffolk has put a significant amount of money on the table. The County Council has invested up front. We have also attracted investment from the Arts Council, and there's a number of other partners. And so this idea that you can do it and it be cost neutral, balanced against the value of doing it, is the dialogue that we're in all the time. In a place like Lowestoft, where there has been a dearth of the opportunity to celebrate and be joyful and feel proud, actually the value of having this annual moment has been really significant, and we've tried to measure it in terms of economic value, but I think there's a different value emerging, which is around the year-round programme that Genevieve and her team deliver as part of this, and that's part of the wider well-being. But Genevieve, I wonder if you want to pick up this idea of how you are working with the local authorities on their public investment and how that's been negotiated from your point of view.
Yes, I think, I mean, I've been amazed at the positive approach that your council, Suffolk County Council, and East Suffolk Council have taken. When we put on First Light Festival in 2019, actually, the money that was raised to do that, there was a huge amount of goodwill, and it probably wasn't the most realistic budget that we put together. We had to make it happen, and we did. And doing it once showed us how we actually had to do it properly and pay everybody who's involved and things like that, you know. And the council have been with us every step of the way. And really my kind of contact is with economic regeneration. That's where we sit with East Suffolk Council. I suppose also at a time when, you know, there's been a lot of Towns Fund money kind of coming to towns, particularly for coastal towns like ours in Lowestoft. I've been able to be involved, to sit on the place board for the town, been able to make a case for culture, and the huge kind of, you know, ripple effect that having cultural engagement in somewhere like Lowestoft that has had too little of it, the impact that that is making. I mean, I was very interested to see both of the presentations from Jon and Symon, but, you know, we know, those of us who are involved in making this kind of work, that actually when you can put it into public spaces where you take down those barriers, you have a real democratic cultural sports engagement, the outcomes and the impact, you know, it's tangible actually. And I can't remember if I said it in my presentation, but it's so much to do with confidence. And I think from us doing First Light Festival, the immediate outcome of that was a lift for the town. It was a confidence, it was an injection of confidence, and that confidence actually was also for the council. And it gave people the energy to think that they could then apply for much more funding, national funding, you know, to be part of big schemes. And we're doing it in partnership. You know, I think you know that, Jayne, obviously, but I think that that is the thing. And I think it takes a few people within a council to see that. And then when that does become apparent, you know, and you can try and measure it, it becomes integral to what's happening in the town. And that's what we try to do. And that's why we have the support. And I think to do things year round that feed into a celebration that brings a place together, but actually you've got groups and organizations. We do an awful lot of work with schools. You know, we can't do that festival without a lot of, you know, young people getting involved through year-round projects, making and presenting and showcasing. We all know that, don't we, who are on this call, but you can feel it in a place. And that social capital, I think, now people do recognise. It's hard to measure, but I think councils across the country now know that these things go hand in hand. So, you know, we're on a journey together, I would say here. It's been very new for Lowestoft. But, you know, I think that where there is that kind of will, and you work together and you're realistic about it, you know, it can be a very, very positive partnership between cultural organisations and local authority.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I completely concur with that. And I think that from the beginning, we talked about the value of doing it, not about a cost neutral. And then after we did the first one, there was so much excitement about how much money was made at car parking, and that, you know, that because that could actually literally be counted. I think the other thing, and I, you know, absolutely want to give a big shout out to our colleague Kerry Blair, and I think for people working in local authorities, saying yes to a proposal like this and running with it and taking your council members with you is, you know, it's actually really what we're paid to do. And Kerry did that. And he, you know, he put himself on the line by encouraging everybody to line up behind this idea. And then that was very inspirational, I think, Genevieve, for everyone involved, that there was a sense of, we will make this work. And I guess the other thing about the value of it, and Genevieve, you might remember this conversation. We were, having done the first one in 2019, we were then talking about whether we were actually had enough money and wherewithal to get going and do one for what would have been 2020. And then we were a bit anxious about that. And we started to talk with colleagues about making it a biannual festival, because that would, enable time for fundraising and planning. And I remember very clearly the leader of the council saying, Lowestoft is not going to have a biannual festival. Other people have them every year. And we can't say to people now that we're going to have this once every other year business. And that was a sense of, we now have a job to do for our public. I think the other thing we were afraid of was how much it cost. And somebody after the event saying, well, that was pretty marvelous, but, how much did it cost and what was the cost to the taxpayer? And it never happened. It literally didn't happen. All the talk for weeks afterwards was how good it was. Mm-hmm. So that, I think it's a very particular message that we really need to hold on to. Now I'm just checking the message box, and I think, Debbie, have you raised your hand? I am trying to see if I can see a raised hand, but here we go. Debbie, I'm going to click on you. Oh no. Can you invite Heidi? Can you invite Debbie to the stage? No, nothing going on. Okay. We're going to keep. Oh, no, Debbie, you are on stage, I'm told. Here she comes. Oh, the stage is set. Debbie, do you need to turn your camera on?
My camera does appear to be on.
We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Oh, hang on. Let me see. There's an icon appeared. There we go. I don't have my nice CLOA background on there, I'm afraid. Hello.
Hello, Debbie. Welcome. Debbie is the chair of CLOA and terrific colleague from Cambridge.
Thank you, Jayne. And thank you to Jon, Symon and Genevieve too. This has really brightened my day, hearing about all these wonderful festivals and events, and the fact that they are free and ungated and accessible to people. It makes us realise the importance of these events. We have some coming up in Cambridge soon, and I know how much people look forward to coming together on open spaces, in our case, not a beach or a town square, but it has tremendous community benefit for a long period of time afterwards. So thank you all for this today. I'm going to ask you a question, actually, panel. I was going to ask you which event you are personally looking forward to going to this year, whether that be small or large. So who's going to go first?
I'll go first. I am so looking forward to going to First Light. I've got my camping pitch, and I don't care if it rains all night long. I'm going to be there for the dawn. I'm going to join the swimmers and do it. I'm also really looking forward to Prima Donna Festival, which is another festival in Suffolk, and I encourage everybody to look at that. We have an extraordinary lineup of people at that festival. Symon, what are you looking forward to?
Well, I'm going to slightly cheat here because I'm going to give you more than one. I mentioned that we've got a street party for the Queen's Jubilee on the Sunday of that bank holiday weekend, and I'm really looking forward to that because the whole street's got involved and everybody's bought bunting. We're all doing bits of catering and music and all sorts. So I mean, that's just one of those really sort of British traditional community gatherings, which I'm really looking forward to. But of course, I have to promote the Birmingham Commonwealth Games, and coming up in July. It's not that far away, and I've got a number of tickets that we've paid for, quite expensive tickets actually, at the Athletics. But I'm really looking forward to that. And in I think about a week's time or 2 weeks' time, going to a Crowded House concert, which was postponed since 2020, but they're finally coming back. So 3 things for me. Thank you.
Jon.
Okay, I'm going to be greedy enough too as well. we're 24 hours away from Radio 1 Big Weekend. So we're hosting that in 24 hours time. So I'm just, after this, I'm going to site for site induction and accreditation. So I'm quite looking forward to that and seeing Ed Sheeran and Harry Styles and all what we've got on offer with 100,000 people in the city over 24 hours. So I'm quite looking forward to not sitting in the control room for some of the time. So that's one. And then we're hosting the International Children's Games in August later this year. And we've got 1,500 11 to 15-year-olds coming from across the world. And it's going to be a remarkable event. Everyone keeps saying to me, we must be mad for hosting 1,500 11 to 15-year-olds and us being responsible for them. But it's going to be a phenomenal event, taking part in 7 different sports, and just the thought of bringing people back together. And this is the first time some of these children are going to travel after COVID, and it's going to be phenomenal to see. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Fantastic. Debbie, I'm going to ask you, what are you looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to going to Cambridge Folk Festival as a punter this year.
It's brilliant.
So I've booked my ticket and my camping, and I'm actually going to set up my working at home base in my little camper van whilst I'm there. So I'm looking forward to that. But I hadn't realised you had Harry Styles coming to the Radio 1 event. You could have most of the country descending upon you, John. So good luck with that.
Yes,
Genevieve, you're there.
We're ready.
Genevieve, over to you.
Yes, well, I'm spoilt for choice as well in our lovely county of Suffolk. I'm looking forward to Prima Donna Festival, which is sort of women writers, but I'm also looking forward to a folk festival called Folk East, which is on our doorstep. Very much. But actually, just to fly the flag for Lowestoft again, as well as our festival in a few weeks' time, we're also opening a new venue on the seafront called the East Point Pavilion, which has these wonderful seafront gardens next to it. And I'm really looking forward at the end of July to the tall ships coming to Lowestoft. We'll be able to kind of host lots of people in our venue who are coming to see that. And then the Armed Forces Day, not something I'd be particularly interested in, but actually I am now, because there are so many people in the town connected to it. And I'm very excited to be part of it in a way with our new venue. So much going on. It's going to be a busy few months. Yeah.
Thank you, panel, again. And Heidi in the background, who we can't see anymore, who I know has been instrumental in making this work and having a trial run of Air Meet for CLOA. Thank you, Heidi. And hasn't talking about events brought a smile to all our faces?
Yes.
So thank you very much, panel.
Thank you, everyone. And I look forward to seeing as many people as want to come to any of the festivals that we've spoken about. And thank you so much. Bye.
Bye all.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks all.